I am so excited to be sitting down with Kimberly today. So often in life, we go through pivots and shifts, and it can feel like one goodbye and another hello, and it just kind of where are we in the in between? So I'm so excited to have her with us today to share her story of how to navigate those seasons of life effectively. Go ahead and I'll mute, and then you can kind of tell your story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, hi, I'm Kimberly, and I'm going to tell you about myself, where I was, who I am now, and how my journey went to get there. Perhaps some of you will relate. So, I started off as a daughter in December of 1969, and 7 years later, I became a sister. As time went on, I acquired more labels and additional identities. I was a student, a friend, an employee. Then came college student, girlfriend, college graduate. And on December 31st, 1993, my status changed to fiancé with a marriage proposal. I moved through graduate school and became a career woman, holding the titles of guidance counselor and licensed professional counselor. Then on July 15th, 1995, I got married and became a wife. Owner followed in 1998. Then titles, labels, and identities came more quickly for me. Mom on September 3rd, 2001 to my son Noah. Mom again on January 1st, 2000 to my daughter Peyton. More changes and more identities. Stay-at-home mom, soccer mom, dance mom, class mom, PTO mom, and volunteer. And also a miserable wife. I was trying to convince myself that I could stick it out for the sake of the kids. Lying to myself that my husband's betrayals would stop. Staying in a marriage that I hated because I was paralyzed by fear. I was determined to keep my life together as I knew it, despite being so despondent. My self-esteem was at an all-time low. My confidence was absolutely non-existent. I was dependent and deflated. At this point, he was the sole financial provider, and I took care of the kids in the house. And that was an arrangement that we had both agreed upon. I put my career on a temporary hold to be home with the kids and grant him the flexibility to grow his career while I took care of really everything else. I had devoted my whole life to being the best wife, mom, friend, family, and community member, and that felt so impossible to let go. I was embarrassed and humiliated at my husband's repeated betrayals, while also feeling mortified by staying in such an emotionally painful union. I felt guilt for not being a better wife. Maybe the situation would have been different if I had just been better. I was feeling so overwhelmed thinking about all of the changes that divorce would mean for me and my kids. I was being swallowed up by all of the what ifs. All I could envision were losses. All I could fathom was pain. I could not imagine any possible or viable gains. I was worried about the financial and emotional ramifications for me and my children, but I was also concerned about the reactions from others: judgment, scorn, rejection, and disapproval. Would people take sides? Would I lose all of our mutual friends? Would my family be disappointed in me? I stayed unhappily married for more years than I care to count. But realistically, close to a decade of our 20-plus year marriage, unhappiness and unknowns, uncertainty and unfulfillment, I was a prisoner to all of them. Finally, the decision was made to get divorced. My husband moved out on December 9th, 2016, which was the day before my 47th birthday. I became the estranged wife. I was now living in what I like to call divorce purgatory. I wasn't in my marriage and I wasn't out of my marriage. My hair was falling out in clumps because of the stress. I was scared and overwhelmed, super pissed off, anxious, heartbroken, ashamed, depressed, resentful, bitter, confused, exhausted, frustrated, hostile, and deflated. And I couldn't sleep. I had to make all of these complicated financial decisions that would affect the rest of my life, as well as have an impact on my children for years to come. And I was now a single parent. I was the sole caretaker of my children and the only head of the household. Everything was my responsibility. And I mean everything. My autoimmune disease kicked into overdrive. I was faced with confusing legal decisions, negotiations that I could barely comprehend, splitting assets, dividing debts, tax implications, business valuations, and projected income. I was so focused on surviving that I was having a hard time focusing on anything else. And I was expected to have some of the most difficult conversations I've ever had to face, sharing time with my children, custody, visitation, parenting plans, child support. My title had now shifted to soon to be X, STBX, a nifty little abbreviation for a place that felt like hell. But the soon didn't seem to be happening soon enough. I spent over 21 months disentangling legally and financially as part of the dissolution of my marriage. The dissolution of my marriage felt like the dissolving of my life. Destroy, disintegrate, disperse, dissipate, disappear. Worse than the legal and financial detangling, the emotional detangling was really a bitch. So there are 5 stages of suck that a person impacted by divorce typically experiences, and I was no exception. So the first one is denial. Divorce sucks, and I'm not going to accept this as reality. I will bury my head in the sand and exist on autopilot. Number 2, then comes anger. Divorce sucks, and this is all my lousy, lying, cheating, no good ex's fault. Then comes number 3, bargaining. Divorce sucks, so I'm going to try and keep this marriage alive, but by obsessing about what ifs, trying to figure out what could have been done differently to achieve a different outcome, and ruminating, all while staying stuck. Then comes number 4, the depression. Divorce sucks, so why bother with anything anymore? I'm tired, I'm hopeless, I'm unlovable, and I will be alone forever. And then the 5th stage is acceptance. Divorce sucks, but now I'm at peace with reality and I could move on. So on December 2018, after 23 years of marriage and having been together for more than half of our lives, our divorce was finalized and I was now the ex-wife. I'm still the ex-wife, but I'm so much more. So in the spring of 2017, I became a solopreneur and I founded my own private practice, Blossom Coaching LLC. In April of 2019, I added the title of Certified Divorce Coach and pivoted Blossom Coaching LLC to specialize in working with individuals impacted by divorce. So here I am, almost 30 years, almost to the day, not really, but close, exactly 30 years post I do, because I got married in 1995 and now we're in 2025. Which is really kind of crazy. So I identify as incredibly proud mother. My little family of 3 is thriving. My son just graduated with his MBA, and my daughter just completed her freshman year in college and is also studying psychology. Most importantly, my children are both kind and amazing humans. I am a mother, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, and I adore my family. I am a divorce coach and therapist, and I love my career. I am a friend, and I have a close circle of friends whom I treasure. I'm a beach bum, and I live down the shore in New Jersey. I'm single and very happily single, and my hair has grown back thicker than ever. So my story is unique to me, but there are many commonalities and parallels to people who are impacted by divorce. There's a lot of us out there, either directly impacted by divorce or people who we know who are impacted by divorce. There's a lot of us. So in the United States, there's about 900,000 divorces annually, which is 40 to 50% of first marriages. And the rate increases with the second marriage, which is 60 to 70% and 75% for third marriages. So if you are impacted by divorce, you're probably just like I was, dealing with overwhelming feelings, fears, and concerns about your future, struggling with loss of identity, emotionally overloaded, cycling through the stages of grief, thinking with what is appropriately called the reptilian brain, which is the raw instinctual part of us that kicks into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn when overwhelmed or overstressed. And life as we know it has been flipped upside down. But I'm here to tell you that you could right side your life up and it could be better than you ever imagined.
I'm so glad to have you here, not only with your clinical expertise, but your street expertise, because getting those 2 together, that's really the secret sauce. So you gave a stat there about first marriages and second marriages. And from your experience in talking with people, what makes that stat true? What are we doing? What's going on in those marriages?
I think that it's, for me and for a lot of my clients, we're not the same people that we were when we got married. So a lot of my clients, like myself, are coming out of long-term marriages, and who we were at 25, 26, 27, it's not who we are when we're 50. And, a lot of times we get married for reasons that are different from I'm getting married because I'm in love and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And that might be true, but sometimes we overlook challenges, differences. We are very focused on the dream of getting married, living happily ever after. And a lot of times that kind of shifts. And often it's almost like rust on a car, like a little bit of a drip. So there's a little drip. and the car gets wet, right? The paint gets wet. And then it keeps dripping and then it starts to rust. And then as time goes by, all of these little slow drips just turn into corrosion. And before you know it, you've got this rusty, junky car that, how did we get here? We don't even know sometimes.
It definitely helps to paint the picture. And so let's say someone is listening to this right now and they're at a place where they are feeling exactly how you are feeling in your marriage. How do you know when to give up, when to let go, when to fight for it? Or is there kind of a thought track that someone could go through to say, "Yeah, this marriage is still salvageable, or this thing been gone, girl. Let's get things moving in
Yeah.
that direction."
Well, it really takes two people to want a marriage to work. So if both people aren't invested in it, it's not going to work. So it's really important that both people are on board for the same reason. And the reason is they want the marriage to work, not because of fear. I had a lot of fear. I stayed in my marriage for much longer than I probably should have because I was scared. So, really looking into why you want to save the marriage and is it salvageable? And are you both on board? And that's a really personal question. Everybody has a different reason. Most of the time, by the time people get to me, they've already made that decision. They know that their marriages are over and they just need help coping with that overwhelm, help knowing what the next steps are. I think we all kind of know in our hearts. We might be justifying staying for other reasons, or maybe there is really a reason to stay. And that's such an individual reason. There's a lot of reasons to stay and there's a lot of reasons to not stay. Figuring that out is really difficult.
Very well said. And now let's say someone woke up this morning and this is day one of their separation. What, besides making a pot of coffee and, taking the dog out or trying to do just those functional tasks, what would you kind of say to them on this first day of this new chapter?
I would say congratulations for getting out of bed, for making your coffee, and for letting the dog out. And if that's all that you could do that day, that's okay. As long as you keep showing up and really just showing up and getting out of bed. And sometimes you might not be able to get out of bed. Sometimes the overwhelm is so great, you just have to take little bites. And a little bite might be taking the dog out or making the coffee. And it will get easier, but giving yourself that grace and space. So, divorce isn't easy. It's not fun. It's very challenging, but you can get through it. So you might feel this temporary insanity, and it is temporary. So it's important, I think, to kind of go back to your best self. Who do you want to be? That kind of becomes your guiding light, your northern light to get you to the other side. So really thinking like, what resonates with me? Is it important to me that I take care of myself? How do you do that? So that might mean the coffee, or it might be joining a gym, or it might be going back to school. It's all about where you're at. It's meeting yourself where you are, really without judgment, but giving yourself that grace and space. What's in my control? What's out of my control? What's important to me? What do I need to do? Who do I choose to be today? Is it, somebody who gets up and gets showered and gets dressed? Or is it somebody that just says, I need to, go sit with a friend of mine and have some coffee? I think it's really important to be able to realize what you need and what you need from people and who you need, right? So you might need a therapist, you might need a best friend, you might need a lawyer, figuring out who you really need and what you need from them. So a lot of times you might need a hug. You might need to vent. You might need to scream. You might need to just have somebody listen and hold space for you while you cry. You might need somebody to give you advice. And knowing what you need and being able to ask for that is really, really important. And it's pretty vulnerable. It's pretty scary to say, I just need you to give me a hug or hold my hand or just let me scream and yell and vent for 30 minutes. I need to take a walk with somebody. I need 5 minutes to just, whatever. Can you watch the kids for me while I do whatever? Just really trying to figure out what you need.
I love that you bring that topic up, not just around divorce recovery, but just as women. I know that I have never taken the time to ask myself, what do I want? Who do I want to be today? Because as you so perfectly put in your life milestones there, we get assigned these roles and then that's the costume we're wearing. That's the script we're reading from. So we're now doing this thing and things evolve, life changes, or kind of things need to just ebb and flow and grow together versus grow apart. How would you help someone take the time to do the self work to figure out who they are and what they want, what makes them happy, kind of down that self care. And then the confidence to implement it without the mom guilt or the husband guilt, or, that I'm not providing for my husband because I'm providing for myself. I'm not providing for my daughter. I know I've definitely struggled with that. And my solution was just don't worry about me.
Yeah.
That was easier, but that's not sustainable or healthy.
Right. And it's funny because I think as women, we do lose ourselves because we are in relationship to other people, right? We're mothers, we're sisters, we're wives, we're whoever we are, and we kind of lose sight of who we are. And I think that that becomes, in any stage or phase of life, really important to really get back to what are your values? Who are you? Who do you want to be? Who do you choose to be? And what decisions need to be made to get there? So it could be even a daily. It's really important to me that I am healthy, so I'm going to get up early and take a jog. Or I'm realizing that I need to prioritize my self-care, so I'm going to say no to some of these things like volunteering too much, right? So people pleasing is a really big issue. So being able to say no, without the guilt, I think the more you do it, the more you realize that it is okay to say no to. I remember when my kids were little, my kids are big now, but I would be the cupcake baker. And then one of my friends that had, a more seasoned mom said, don't do that. You sign up to be the paper plate and napkin mom. And as soon as that shifted, I was like, this is fantastic. I'm never going to bake a cupcake again. I'm going to only bring, the paper plates. And it was still, you can still be true to your values. My value was I want to be involved with my kids and be supportive of their school. And I don't want to bake cupcakes. So, figuring out that balance was really paramount. So, showing up for yourself, because you can't be the best version of these identities, these roles, unless you're coming from a place where you feel comfortable with yourself and you feel strong and you feel healthy and you feel confident. And that's really hard for women.
In conversations I've had like this with women all over the world, that's what I'm hearing as like the common thread where things go off the rails in their marriages. And I use the oxygen mask example.
Yes.
Because women are not putting their oxygen mask on first, they're then not able to show up sustainably, to show up as the wife they need to be, as the mother they need to be. And so I've heard that story over and over again. And I then identified it in myself that I was doing those same things, that it's not sustainable. You have to do the self care and the love first. And that is just not something that as a society, we don't we don't praise that. We don't bring that. So how do you work with, well, I kind of want to segue to explain to our listener kind of the difference between a coach and a therapist, and then kind of what they could expect if they have anxiety about working with someone to help them uncover those parts of themselves. What would the process look like, feel like, that kind of thing?
So I am, like I said, I pivoted my pain into my purpose and my passion, and it's now helping people. I started off as a therapist. So as a therapist, we dive deeper into, childhood trauma or pain patterns that might have gotten you to this place. So it's more focused on the past and breaking those patterns. And as a coach, coaching to me it's different and it's almost more rewarding to work with clients because I can see their progress. I mean, I see their progress when I'm working as a therapist also, but with coaching, it's more goal oriented, it's future focused, it's coming up with a concrete plan. Of course, we do kind of touch on different patterns and let's not repeat them, but we deal with more the present. Like, where are you now? I want to meet you where you are now, and we're
Yeah.
going to move forward. So, I love watching clients, walking along clients on their path, on their journeys, because the changes are remarkable and it's non-judgmental. It is about you and for you. So, I'm almost like a hand holder. I am somebody to walk the path with you. I'm a sounding board. I am let's talk about this and figure out different scenarios so we could make the best choices. Because really, transitions, any kind of transitions, but I specialize in divorce, transitions are endings and then they're welcoming a new beginning. I think you referenced that earlier, and they're made up of a lot of decisions. Like you said before, like the decision to get out of bed, to make your coffee, and to take your dog for a walk. Everything is made up of little decisions. So if we look at it as one decision at a time, that when they're compiled together, they really create opportunities. And
Mhm.
like in my situation, I started off with this horrible, heartbreaking situation, and step by step, little decisions along the way. And here I am now. So if you just look at it as little decisions, little reflections back to your best self, which again is not your perfect self, but more reflective and in alignment with who you want to be.
Mhm.
Again, not perfect, but that helps guide you. So it's not so overwhelming. So it's really step by step, decision by decision. And then you can create opportunities for yourself, big or small.
Love that because this is definitely not something again that we talk about. You don't go to therapy as an adult quite often. You may go 2 times to try to save your marriage because that's the box you check, but just kind of see it through. And coaching definitely is a new concept. And as I have met with coaches all over the world that specialize in their niche, I see how amazing it is to have someone who is skilled and certified and trained in that niche to help walk through versus what we've been doing is just chatting with our girlfriends at wine night and kind of trying to gather these bits of advice and help as we can. And they're all well intended, but it's not a true process. And so I'm so grateful people like you do what you do that provide that structured process. So if someone did want to reach out and follow you, kind of where would they look online or socials for that?
Sure. So I am Blossom Coaching, and my email is kimberlylauracoaching.com. And I run workshops and I run divorce support and recovery groups because I really do believe that there is healing with camaraderie, with community. So it's a structured and supportive support group and recovery group. And then I work with people one on one. Yeah, I love to help people through. I have a lot of colleagues that I collaborate with. I help people even figure out what questions to talk to their lawyers about because, a lawyer charges so much per hour and you don't want to use your lawyer as a therapist. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So, I help people work through what's it back to values. What's important to you? What are your wants, your needs, and your wishes? How do you present that to your lawyer so your lawyer knows really what is important to you, or your mediator, right? Because there are different ways to get divorced, which is another thing that I can help people with. What's the best option for me? A lot of people, these are a lot of emotional decisions that are really practical decisions. So I help people filter out the emotions and get to the practicality. So if you work with somebody to help you with your finances and you really want to keep the house, but it might not be financially feasible, we could talk about, well, what is it about the house that's so important to you? What would that look like if you stayed? Is it that you love the house or do you love the neighborhood? Do you want to keep your kids in the same school? What other options are there? So it's a lot of helping people think outside of the box and look at other options because when we are, thinking with that reptilian brain, we're not thinking clearly, right? When we're emotional, we're not making the best decisions. So I help people really figure out their emotions, come to terms with their emotions, process their emotions, work on their emotions separately from their decisions. So they can really just move forward confident that they've made the best decisions while also getting that emotional support. Because it could be lonely and scary and overwhelming, sad. I mean, there are so many emotions that are going to hit you if you're going through divorce or really any kind of transition. So it's important to have those decision-making skills.
And I'm so glad to have you doing this, talking about this, offering these coaching services because just like doing taxes or maintaining your car, we're not taught those basic life things in school. We're not taught how to be married. What are the roles? What are the expectations? So that was a huge eye-opening conversation that we had just on the podcast a couple weeks ago. And so now to kind of complete the circle, how to get divorced. That's not
Mhm.
something we're taught in school either. And there's
No.
such a lack of education and the emotion at that time, it makes it very easy to not pause, to ride that wave of emotion and not pause and seek out the education to understand exactly what is the best. You're just rolling with it at that point.
You are
So I'm
literally
so
rolling
grateful.
downhill. Yes, you are rolling downhill, and that's another thing. We talk about the power of the pause, like really
Mhm,
pausing. We talk about communication. We talk about,
mhm.
it's better not to be face to face or on the phone with your ex it's better to text or even better to email, texting only in emergencies because that immediacy, how to calm your nervous system down, how to regulate your emotions, how to communicate with somebody who's right now somebody you used to love, but who now feels like the enemy. And you've got all these things to decide with them, things that are the most precious to you, like your kids. Will my kids be okay? It's another thing we talk about parenting. So many decisions.
You're so right, and I'm so glad to have you on to talk about it because it can feel like I'm an idiot. I don't understand these things. Thus, I'm an idiot. No, girl, there was no class in 10th grade that taught you
Right,
how to get divorced or, we're just not. And there are very few even guidebooks about it.
right,
And it
right.
is very overwhelming. And your only option is a attorney at $450 an hour. I mean, that's your only
Yeah,
solution.
yeah,
And you don't know the options you have with a parenting plan. You don't know the
right.
options that you have, and then what? Here's what's going to happen. So I'm so glad that we were able to chat with you today
Yes,
and that you're
thank you.
sharing your knowledge and your compassion with the world. I love that. And so we'll make sure and put all your contact info in the show notes. That way folks can reach out to you if they're going through or feeling, that they're in a
Yes,
pivot point or, specifically going through a divorce. It's okay to ask for help beyond just an attorney
yes.
with this. I love that. Please, I wanted you to leave us with some last words for, again, someone who might be on like day one of this journey.
Yeah, so divorce was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it made me stronger than I ever thought I could be. And although life doesn't always turn out as you imagined, it could be better than you ever expected.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, for being on
Thank
with us
you.
today.
Thank you so much.